Welcome to our 10th SiS Masters Sport by Sport Innovation Society. Every week, we have the luck to share with leaders around the world about different topics that are impacting our favorite topics, the sports industry. Today, we have the great honor to welcome Juli Ferré Nadal, great experience in entertainment and sport business, and in last years, specifically in the football industry, being former head of global sports partnerships at FIBA Barcelona, commercial and marketing director at AS Monaco, not a bad club, the one who made many talents, including Mbappe. Juli has now founded his own company, JFN Sport, if I may say it in English. And our topic today is driving revenue in a disrupted world. Feel free to send your questions in the Q&A section down on your Zoom, and we'll get to the answers at the end of the session. But Juli, first and foremost, how are you? How do you feel back in Monaco?
Well, Arno, thank you very much for the nice introduction, and the honor is mine. Let me tell you that. I've been following your activities for a while now. It's really an honor to be with all of you today. So no, I'm feeling good, feeling great. Summer is here, so Monaco is not a bad place to be. So no complaints on that field.
Cool. I think it's, by the way, I think it's good if we go back a bit in time where you were a bit younger, and for the audience to know about your journey in the sports and entertainment business. I mean, you from Cirque du Soleil to AS Monaco to what you do now, working with startups as well. Can you let us know more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm born and raised in Barcelona. That's my hometown and where I studied business administration. And, I ended up in sport and entertainment almost as a coincidence. My world was marketing. That's been my expertise from day one, and my major at the university. But I was doing, let's say, more standard marketing jobs, and I was in consultancy and so on. And then the great change for me came when I saw a job offer on Cirque du Soleil. I was living back in the day in Amsterdam, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that they were here and they were having jobs in marketing and commercial. And then, I did the interviews. It worked very well. They were looking for somebody that spoke many languages, and I was Spanish, which was a big market for them. So it worked. And then, my whole life, if I may say, changed, because that was my first step into the sponsorship world in a fantastic brand. Here is where I learned already, how to take care of your brand, even if you are selling it to third parties as a sponsor or other partners, but how you have to protect your brand. That's crucial. And then after that, I was like, well, that is my moment to get into sports, which is my passion. So then, I had the opportunity to start working for beach soccer, which is a fantastic sport, and helped me to, get my feet into the ground, or into the sand in this case. And then, the opportunity came again to work for FIBA in Switzerland, and that was fantastic, because I was part of the basketball world championship in Turkey, the Olympic Games 2012, the preparation, 2 Eurobaskets, and the preparation for the World Cup in 2014. And then my dream job arrived. I cannot call it any other way. FC Barcelona, had an opening, and the stars aligned, and I could be part of the FC Barcelona commercial department, with a focus on my expertise, which is the international business. And it was 4 years and a half, a lot of learning. Fantastic. It's an incredible brand, incredible club to be in. And then another opportunity came, with AS Monaco, and that was fantastic, because it enabled me to take the commercial direction. So all the revenue streams of a club, whereas before my expertise or my experience was more focused on sponsorship. So I continued to do sponsorship, of course, but I could take care of stadium, of digital and international strategy of the club together with the digital team, merchandising. I did a new kit deal for the club. I mean, all of this was part of my responsibility, which was fantastic as a step after being at Barcelona. So that's my journey, you know, until today, 2020, which I think is a year that nobody will forget ever. So I will neither, and I will, you know, I'm starting now on my own, you know, focusing on all my experience. So that's my journey. A lot of different stops in my journey, but always very enriching, you know. So here we are today.
Here we are today, and now you have your own company, and you also work with startups in Monaco.
Yes.
If you want to tell a bit more about that.
Yeah, no, for sure, with pleasure. I mean, my new venture. I mean, it's really putting my experience on the market. You know, in terms of what I've done in the last years of sponsorship, commercial strategy, international strategy for clubs, for brands that want to, you know, grow internationally, because of course international is the big field of growth for athletes, for clubs, for leagues, for everything, you know. So, you know, this is my expertise. So I want to put that into the market. I do consulting services. I do commercial management. So I could be like, let's say, an outsourced commercial director, you know, not having a full-time job, not having a contract as an employee, but as an external, you know, with all the flexibility that this gives to the client. And indeed, innovation, it's, let's say, my new thing. You know, I think you always have to learn something new and get yourself into new ventures. And thanks to the team of Monaco Foundry, you know, and I got absolutely into that. It's, you know, really a great startup accelerator here in Monaco, in which we're paying a lot of attention to what's happening with startups in the sports field. And you know, it's helping me and has put my, let's say, my antenna, my radar a lot into innovation and how innovation can help, actually, and will help, there's no question, football clubs and leagues or any other sport, you know, how it will help to develop and to go through this current crisis, but more importantly, I would say, how they will be after that crisis, you know, how you prepare for the after COVID-19. I think that's something that we cannot forget. You know, we're trying to, in a way, survive these months, but you know, we need also to prepare for the aftermath.
Yeah, innovation is about designing your future if you want to have one. I love this sentence from one former speaker. You know, if you don't design your future, what is the one you're going to have? You never know. But the thing is that right now the world is changing. I mean, you've been working in very different contexts. FC Barcelona is, if I may, the opposite of AS Monaco. Both clubs have good results, but you know, one with a massive fan base, one smaller. So you've been working different cultures, but the world itself is changing. So when we decided about the topic, you know, driving revenue in a changing world, in a disrupted world, because I believe today we live in a disrupted world. Beyond the pandemic, as you say, we have to think beyond. What do you think are the major shifts that are impacting the business and the football world today?
I think that, I mean, I attended many webinars also this month too, and I think that one of the things you hear a lot, and it's so true, is that the current crisis or the pandemic has accelerated many things, you know, and things that would be happening in years, they're probably happening in months, you know. And there's a sentence that it's even a bit of a cliche these days, you know, because we hear it a lot, but in a way it's so true, you know. I mean, you need to think way more digital. You need to see how technology can help you in your objectives, you know. If you are thinking, and you know, if I take this example of sponsorship, if you are just thinking about how big is the logo in the backdrop, it was already wrong before the COVID-19, but now it's an absolute disaster. You're completely out of place. You know, this is not what brands want. For instance, you know, the way you communicate to people, you know, this, you need to accept that it has changed. You know, and before that, you needed to cope with your local fan, you know, which is of course a minority versus the millions of fans you might have around the world, but they're still so important, you know, and they're your core, you know, and you cannot forget about them, you know. And I think that in these months we saw that some clubs had fantastic initiatives with their local people, you know, and it was like, okay, well, it's important that the clubs don't forget that, you know, you are attached to a city and to the people, you know. Doesn't mean you have to forget the millions you have, because we'll talk about that also, the digital monetization, all of this. But the balance also, I think, is very, very important. It's probably two different tone of voices. It's different messaging, but you cannot neglect one of the parties. So I think what this pandemic is putting on the table is really like, setting the priorities really straight, how you treat your partners also, I mean, sometimes we take for granted that, they are there and, they need to pay because we are playing matches, okay, guess what? We were not playing matches, so the relationship you had with them is so important, in order to deal with potential compensation, to negotiate that, there's no reductions, there's, something that maybe can be done next season, and I think that it's really important to set all of this straight, that it's not the inertia that will take you anywhere, the inertia of football, and the big problem of football, the short-term vision. I think it's almost a mission impossible, but the short-term vision of clubs is sometimes such a problem, because then, you're thinking about next season max, and sometimes not even that. You're thinking about finishing this season. And you need to go beyond that. And you need to say, okay, how do I want my club in 3 years? How do I want it in 5 years? And that needs to come from top management. And I'm not saying the commercial directors need to try to drive it, but it needs to come from the top, and not expect that doing the old things that we're working 10 years ago, 5 years ago, results will come now. You need to invest a bit in technology, and there are now solutions that don't even require that big of investment, so, but you need to think in that direction.
There are many specific topics in your answer, which is very rich. We're going to go through different of them. You make me curious when you speak about short-term, mid-term, and eventually long-term, and there's a lack most of the time in football clubs. You see short-term, same for players sometimes, players transactions. In the case of a club like AS Monaco, do you have clear strategic plan? I mean, do you know many clubs that have a clear 5 years, let's say 3 to 5 years strategic plan, or it's not happening like that?
No, I think that, in the two clubs I worked, there was an exercise to build a strategic plan.
Yeah.
In both, okay? And that's a good thing, in AS Monaco, for instance, there was an external party helping and steering all this exercise in order to build the future of the club and to have a vision, a common vision. So on that sense, I think that I've been lucky enough on that sense. The problem is that you are, and anybody that is in sport and football, especially football clubs now, will understand what I'm saying. Is that you can do everything in the offices, but if the results of the team are not as planned, and it's a sport, so it can happen. You can have bad surprises, you can have terrible season. This big player that joined this summer is not performing as you wanted. The whole structure, of the club and the whole vision starts to shake up, and that's what it's so annoying sometimes for being a football club. Like, you have all figured out, you work it out, you can work perfectly with your CEO, everything is in place, and then, you have a bad season or not a season as you wanted, everybody gets nervous, and then everything is shaken up. And I think that's also an issue. I think that, I think in the US, they have a better vision, and maybe even in the UK, maybe it's a bit more about the Anglo-Saxon vision of things, that business is one thing and sport is the other thing. In the rest of the world, I would say probably Latin America, the same thing, and in Europe, the Latin countries at least, it's so affected, and the whole thing can change upside down.
Yeah, that's a discussion we've had with different club CEOs and owners in one of the last webinars. Is what is a perfect organization? Are business and sport separate and report to the owner or to a big CEO? Or you mix it and it's shaking, and every time there's a storm, when you don't have good results, the boat is losing, is losing the cape in a way.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's very complicated, and there's no perfect solution. The best would be that the business is independent and goes on, but the owner or the president will not be the, you know, will not be in the same mood, you know, if the team is performing and, you know, the fans are happy and all is good and the media are not bothering, you know, it changes a lot if then, you know, the results are not there and everybody's getting nervous. You know, approvals are more difficult to get, budgets, you know, not that easy. So it's a bit the frustration of football clubs, I think, you know, and that's why sometimes it's about short term, because the most important thing is to see how you end this season, you know, and then you'll think about the next one. But I think that both in sports, but in business, at least you need to have a plan and say, okay, you know, these are the trends, this is what happened. You need a good business intelligence in the club that say, okay, you know, gives you the direction. This is what's happening. This is what you should be paying attention. This is who you should meet in order to, you think, you know, from the business side, what should be the next move to prepare the club.
Right. In your comments also, you mentioned I will put it in different words. I think football is kind of a business of relations. Digital relations with international fans, relation with your community and the local fans, relation with the sponsors, relation with the media. And you have to build all those relations. And so all those relations, I would say, and you will correct me, are the consequence of the brand vision and the storytelling that you want to say. Do you think the way you know, the club leaders develop the brand of the clubs has changed in the last years? How is it moving on?
I think that, I mean, it's certain. I mean, relationship first. I mean, it's sport in general. It's passion and it's people. You know, and this is what makes it the what it is. You know, and you cannot forget that. The way you entertain these relationships is what changes. You know, I mean, you cannot entertain the same way your member, you know, that lives in the city and has been there with their seat for 40 years, as, you know, the new fans you want to get in Southeast Asia, you know, but you still need to build a relationship with them. You still need to do it. You know, the partners and, you know, the brands that want to be part of the club, you know, you need to create a relationship with them, that they feel that they are part of something, you know. And to your point, it's very important that the vision of the club is clear and it's shared with the partners, you know. And I think that again, you cannot treat the same way the partner that has been with you, you know, the local beer that's been with you for 10, 15 years and will always be with the club, with the new bank you sign in Mexico, you know. It's a different relationship, and we need to entertain always these relationships in all the ways, you know, that we have. And trying, of course, I mean, I'm not naive, you know, we are here, we're talking about monetizing, we're talking about making money, you know, but I think that the relationship needs to come first, and that the money will be the consequence of that. You know, if you treat well your partners and you have the right relationship, if you have the right engagement with your faraway fans, if you treat well your local members, you treat well your local VIP clients, you have different segments of people. It's your segmentation, you know, it's just becoming more and more complex. So, you know, and you have departments and teams that should take care of each of them, you know. But the vision of the club should be, we need to work on relationship and engagement, you know, and be a family, in sort of speak, and everybody feels part of the family. How that's transmitted to all of them, that's the job of each head of department or team or whatever, you know. And I think that, yes, it has evolved a lot because football clubs, you know, have more and more relationships like this, you know. They have millions of fans around the world, you know. And I always say there are big majority of your fans that will never be in your stadium. They will never be in the city, you know. They will follow virtually what you're doing. So that determines completely that relationship. And that shouldn't be against the fact that you have X thousand members that go there every weekend in, weekend on, weekend off there, you know. So treat them also in the right way, you know. And your hospitality, they're spending a lot of money, and some of them are big companies, some of them are not that big companies, and they're making the effort to use your services, you know. So all of these, I think it's a whole, you know, but it has to be the culture of the club, you know, to entertain those in the right way. And relationship, you know, will always be key, you know, and will always be key. Now we are in a moment, a lot of Zoom and a lot of Microsoft Teams and everything is a good example, but relationship, you know, seeing face to face people, you know, shaking hands, you know, trust, that's something that will never hope will never be lost.
Yeah, and it seems that storytelling and authenticity are key words now in the way you communicate, because in the millions of options that have the fans and the sponsors as well, and how to invest their money, they want to, I would say, buy. I don't like that word, but they have to buy the storytelling, and they have to buy the stories that you want to say as a club to the fans. And do you think the fans, then we go to the sponsors, but do you think the fans have changed their expectations to the club? Because in many business, we've seen that there's a shift towards a need for authenticity or need for making a positive impact in society. Do you think there's a shift in the soccer fans?
I think that, there's certainly a shift. There's certainly a shift because the truth is that, for starters, the football fan, and when I was a kid, you had to go to the stadium. Like going to the stadium, and see the only way you saw live your team was going to the stadium, right? So going to the stadium was like, a ritual. Now, we see it in many clubs, that members, the no-show is amazing. And it's not because they lack interest per se. It's just that the way that you can watch your team, it's endless. You can do it at home, you can do it in a bar, in a pub, you can meet with friends, you can, if you are the weekend away, you can watch it from your mobile. So it's not lack of interest. People continue to follow the love team, but they don't need the presence in the stadium as it was before, in a way, But at the same time, it doesn't mean they don't care, and that's sometimes the mistake that should be avoided, So they care, and they will still follow you on social media and pay a lot of attention, and be scrutinizing you a lot on what you do online, on the online world. So the funny thing is that you cannot, both, if you communicate to your local fans and you communicate to your international fans, you should try to use different tone of voices, but you cannot hide one from the other. If I'm a local fan, I'm gonna see what you're doing, especially in English, and it's not one that doesn't see the other. It's by channel, and in parallel. So it's certainly an evolution. It's certainly an evolution where people are expecting a lot from the club. They see there's a lot of money, the fans, they see there's a lot of money moved around, and they expect certain things from the club, and they're very, very demanding, and they have new channels now to communicate. Before, you had to go to the stadium and show your white handkerchief when you were not happy with something. You don't need to do that anymore. You can do that on Twitter, you can go to Facebook, you can do many things, and they are scrutinizing every message. You only have to see all the comments in any message by any club, and especially if it's the president. So, it has evolved for sure.
Yeah. So we'll go now to the revenue generation. Major incomes traditionally come from TV and broadcasting, match day incomes that includes ticketing, hospitality, food, and other concessions. Commercial or sponsorship, at the end it's the same. Retail, property development, and players transactions. Your expertise is very much focused on commercial and sponsorship, but I'm going to have quick question on TV and broadcasting fees. We've seen in the last 20, 30 years that the media rights were keeping on growing, always higher than average economic growth rates in countries. And new players were always coming, new players. So you would stick to free-to-air TVs and come pay TVs and come to social platforms and now OTT. What with the COVID, do you think there will be a change? Because there's also a fragmentation of audience, a clear fragmentation. So what are your thoughts on how it will evolve when it comes to the media rights space?
Well, I think that, as you said, the good thing for media rights is that there's always been something that made it go up. As you said, it was free to air, then it was to pay TVs, then it was the telecoms. Now we have new players like Amazon. So there's always a way to play it up. Which is fantastic for the people that do that job of selling. But I think that I don't see particularly in the near future this changing much. I mean, of course, if you are due to negotiate this year the renewal of your contract, I think you might be in a difficult situation. That's for sure. And I think that there's been a lot of issues, a lot of worries. When everything stopped and nobody knew if the championships will come back. And still, we are paying a lot of attention if the Champions League, hopefully, I really do hope so, will be played in Lisbon, right? But there was a big question mark at some point that created a lot of issues, and some leagues like the French league has stopped, amongst others, right? So that's a big issue. But that's one specific issue that it's like the crisis of the COVID. If we talk about the upcoming contracts, I don't think that they will be affected that much, especially for the big events or the big leagues, because it will the interest on sports, and that's the good news for the ones that were in that industry, will remain. The only thing, the same way that we will talk, how the clubs need to adapt to the to what the sponsors want, to what the fans want. Broadcasters will need to adapt to what the viewers want, again, their industry has changed a lot. I mean, the times of sitting in front of your TV and watching the 90 minutes straight, it's dead. There's the second screen phenomenon. There's the streaming phenomenon. The streaming is a big one. How streaming will evolve, how they will cope with that. So I think that it's going to be more a matter of how the classic broadcasters, and that's why the role of the Amazons will be really important, how they adapt to the new reality of technology. But we talk about streaming, great, but many studies show that people, they like streaming, but they want good quality. The times of the lousy streaming that was stopping every 10 seconds and so on, people don't have patience for that. They don't want that anymore. So it has to be a quality one. You see in restaurants in the weekends, people that watch on the mobile. So they need to be adapting to that reality, and they need to be adapting also how the youngsters consume all of that. That's another big one. How gamification can be part of this. How can they entertain the new generations that they don't watch TV? First thing, they want to watch things when they want to watch them. In their terms. They like games. That's a huge one. That's a huge one. And they need to prepare also. So I think we would see more trends on that direction. I don't think the fees will be suffering that much in the midterm.
Yeah, we see that in the US. For young people, average video is 9 seconds, and you lose or you keep them after 4 seconds.
No, but look at TikTok. Look at what TikTok is.
15 seconds.
It's amazing. It's a different way to consume content, and TikTok is a good example of how some football clubs are doing a good job, jumping in, and during the lockdown we saw quite some examples, and you need to be part of this movement, but you realize clearly how the way they consume content is completely different from the other generations.
Yeah, so you've got live with the big fees for live content. You've got social media with another offer of content, but clubs, as they are entertainment and media companies, they're producing content and experiences. Do you think non-live content and direct-to-consumer solutions will become a direct revenue stream for clubs, up to eventually one day substitute media rights, traditional media rights, I would say?
I think the substitution of media rights, that's going to be difficult, because I mean, the beauty of sports at the end is the live. That's what makes this special. So I doubt that part. But there is clearly a reality that comes from many years now, is that the fan wants content 24/7. Nobody wants to wait just for the game that comes, if you're lucky, every 4 days. That's over. I mean, everybody knows that. And social media has been the answer to that so far. On for the last year, certainly. That's one way to do it. And we're seeing a lot about OTT, and I think OTT, as with everything that comes around this this field, the challenge is monetization. I think in terms of engagement, content, and having a direct line with your consumer is key. With your fan, it's key for sure. Monetization is the big thing. That's why I think what Barcelona has done this year, launching Barça TV Plus, it can be a fantastic case study. Because with all the following that the club has digitally around the world, over 300 million, it would be good to know how many will be converted to Barça TV Plus and how many of them will be paying, because of course you have the free subscription and you have the premium subscription. And, of course it will depend on the quality of content and so on. I mean, they will put big efforts, but I mean, if you hear what Didagli from FC Barcelona said we're competing with Disney. We're not competing with just other football clubs. And he said that very clearly. So I think that's the right approach. It's the right vision because it's absolutely true, and we're going to see more and more of that. But it needs to be quality. That's the other thing. If you do an OTT and there's no behind the scenes exclusive content, you see everything you can see on Facebook, it's not, it's going to lose a lot of strength. If you manage to really invest in it and have something that is special for your fans, that's going to be interesting. And it will be interesting to see the monetization. But I mean, FC Barcelona believes in that, as a big stream for the near future. And I think it's a very interesting move.
And we see, in the case of FC Barcelona, you had traditional media rights, Barça TV Plus, and match day on Netflix at the same time. So it's two new ways, Barça TV and Netflix, two new channels to communicate and generate incomes at the same time.
Let me correct you with one thing. Match day is with Rakuten because Rakuten is the main partner of the club. So it's part of it's a documentary that is in Rakuten TV. So it's linked to the sponsorship.
Okay.
Which is another way of monetization also. To have a partner like Rakuten that is able to produce this and to put it in their platform. And it's a great way to have to engage this relationship with your main partner. Doing it with them instead of doing it with other platforms.
Okay, so when we see the documentary on Netflix, it's produced by Rakuten.
If it's in Netflix, it's a Rakuten documentary.
Okay, nice. Okay, so that makes a good transition to the sponsorship topic. Last year's new brand categories, new brand origins when it comes to countries, Rakuten is an example. New sponsorship offers. That means there's a transformation of the sponsorship market. As you said, logo is good if you want, brand awareness, very quick, and you're a new player like Huawei. But how do you see the transformation of the sponsorship market and the transformation of the needs of the brands?
Well, I think that indeed, what again, it's fascinating from our market is the evolution. Because I just want to jump into that, and then of course I will answer your question. But
no, please.
If somebody would have told me 2 years ago that Uber Eats will be the naming partner of Ligue 1 in France, I would not believe it. And now that's the case. And as a result of that, or maybe in parallel, I don't know, Deliveroo is getting into football also. And you see Hotels.com, that is Hotels.com, which is with UEFA. So I think that's what is fascinating about sponsorship is how new industries almost realize that sports is the right vehicle for them to communicate, and to engage with people, because there's nothing like sports to do that. In terms of markets, the same thing. I mean, you saw the World Cup in Russia, how many Chinese sponsors you had. So, and how many now betting partners from Russia are coming up, which 2 years ago, nobody was really thinking of. So it's really interesting to see all of this. So I think that when it comes down to the new trends or what's happening, I think in order to engage with all these new brands, again, if the story of the logo on the backdrop is almost dead for everybody, for these brands, it's not even a conversation. You need to be ready to talk about digital, who is your consumer, data, what can you do with that, because it's their world, their world is to manage all this data, to connect through digital, they know what's the response, they know what's the conversion and so on. If you're not ready to have this level of conversation, and you go with your speech about, your logo will be in the backdrop, game over, it's dead. So I think that the new trends come into technology, and that's undeniable. And when we talk about new things, I mean, allow me also to talk about a new platform that is launching at the end of August, which is a client of mine now, a new client, which is Iconic. But what's interesting for this topic is that Iconic wants, the objective of Iconic is to be an all-in-one platform for sport fans, and you will see a lot about this in the coming weeks. But again, it's a new player that is getting into the market, doing deals with some clubs, and it's a new player that I would say 6 months ago, it wasn't there. So this is how fast it can go. So you need to really be connected to what's happening in the market, and you need to have your offering that can adapt to what these brands want, and technology is certainly how you manage data. Data is the big thing now, because we talk for many years how many fans you have on Facebook, how many fans you have on Instagram, and so on. This is great to show the power of your brand, the appeal of your brand. But when you get a bit more sophisticated conversation about, okay, what can I do with your millions of fans? Here's where many clubs are lost, because there's hardly any database. They don't know anything about the fans, and that doesn't go too far with many brands nowadays. With some still do. I mean, there's different level of brands and different objectives, but I think you need to really be ready to play that game and to talk this conversation. These are my fans. Here's the description. These are the demographics. This is where they live. This is the brands they like. You have very good examples of clubs that do that, but it's absolutely key to become a reliable platform for the brands.
So the clubs are becoming in some ways digital platforms where brands, where the clubs are competing with other digital media in some ways to reach potential prospects or clients and convert them. Would you agree on that?
I can agree to that. I mean, and it's we don't like that on the sense that we offer more on the club, and it's true, we do. But the reality is that the other person that needs to make decision has a limited budget. Some of them internally, and some people say, listen, put this in Google or in Facebook or whatever, and we'll get better results. Because, there's this word that the ones that we sell, it's our worst enemy sometimes, which is ROI, They want ROI. They want to know, for every euro or dollar they put, what's coming, if there's conversion. And this is something that in Google or Facebook or other platforms, you put a certain budget and you have a tracking of what's happening. In sponsorship, historically, it's not the case. You put money and let's see what happens. And yes, we can measure. I'm exaggerating a bit. We are measuring, there's the Nielsen reports and, the Blinkfire and company reports. We are, of course, preparing and trying to adjust that. But I would say it's not enough for the level of sophistication and detail that the brands want in order to invest their money.
So that means there are new profiles of people getting into the clubs as well, because you need to get data and digital experts that can speak the same language.
Absolutely, and I've seen clubs doing that, and I think it's a very smart move. You need still the commercial people that understand football, because at the end we are selling passion, and storytelling. So that should be, in a way, what convinces a brand to entertain a conversation, because there's a match, because they like it, because maybe you are in the right city for them, on the right market, and so on. That takes you to a certain level of conversation. But when it gets really interesting, and even you can maximize, you can show what's the worth of your package, because you have data to back it up. Is to say, listen, and actually I have all these fans, This is how I communicate to them. This is who they are. This is the gender. This is the demographics. This is where they live. This is the salary levels and so on. And that's when they see, okay, because they are marketeers. We cannot forget that they're marketeers. They need to invest their money where their consumer is. That's their job. So let's make it as easy as possible for them. The minimum gets, and the times that where you do a deal because the CEO likes the club or likes that sport, I'm sure that there's still a minority, but this is over. This is over. The marketeer, the marketing director, the sponsorship director will need to convince their superior, who will go to the CEO, and maybe the CEO will need to go to a board. So be as solid as you can be with data, because data nobody can contest. The rest can be easily contested, but when you have data and say, listen, these guys, their fans match at certain percentage our consumer, because we have both data, strong case. So I think this is where we're going, to be honest. And a lot of clubs are doing a good job with that, but I think this is the ones that will step up with that will have a very solid case.
Yeah, sure. And does it mean that the relationship with the sponsors on the operational side is changing a lot? Because I believe if you compare to sponsorship, which is an advertising campaign on digital in some ways, to Google search, you report every week on your, the efficiency of your campaigns and so on. So does it mean the way you work with the sponsors is changing a lot as well when it comes to testing ideas, testing campaigns, looking at the results together, finding new ideas, iterate, optimize?
I think it's changing, but not enough, to be honest. I think that we live in the football clubs a lot, the reality of every match coming in and coming out and so on and all this, and we're carried away by this dynamic. I think that what I've seen changing in the last years is that, having data, having reports also on digital, I mean, it goes without saying that that's the minimum you have to do. I mean, I cannot imagine not doing that. And I think that there is a gap. That's my personal opinion. From what I've seen in general in the industry, there is a gap about the expectation of a brand or a company and what the club delivers on that sense. I think that the club, the brand, will like to have way more communication from the club in terms of data, in terms of ideas, in terms of initiatives. And I think that's not happening at that level. I think that there is a gap there, and many times the resources can be very limited in a football club. That's a reality, and that's part of it. But I think there is a gap of on the servicing on that sense, on not on delivering the contract. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking really about proactively working this relationship, and that the brands feel, okay, I'm receiving everything I want from the club. I think that there is still a mismatch.
Yeah, because at the end, the club servicing team becomes the agency of the client, who's the sponsor in some ways, because you need to propose, and deliver data. You also need to understand a lot the business challenges of the client, so digital challenges and other challenges. That means that, and there are new business models in many industries based on, for example, revenue shares. Would you imagine that some ways you could have some sponsorship linked to revenue shares? Let's say Rakuten becoming a sponsor of Barcelona. By the way, congratulations for that deal. Rakuten becoming a sponsor, or Uber Eats. They want people to register to the app. Could we imagine a low fixed price for the sponsorship and a high bonus based on number of acquisition linked to the campaign?
I think that yes, and I think that is happening already in some companies, that they have indeed a basis, and I don't know if it's revenue share per se, but it's like
bonus
bonus based on KPIs.
Yeah.
that I saw a very good webinar with Elko van der Nol from Budweiser, and was saying that they are already putting that in the contracts. They're saying, okay, this is okay. You're asking me for this level of fee, okay, but I have these objectives, okay. So if I reach those objectives, I have no problem paying you that fee, you know. So if I win, you win. If I don't win, you know, you cannot win. You know, it has to be like based on objective. So I think it's becoming more and more. I saw it less in Europe so far, to be honest with you, but I think that's a trend, and even more that could potentially be, and to be fair, could be potentially be a good solution now in the COVID or after COVID, when the companies are struggling, saying, okay, this is the basics, and if you know, as a club, I help you to reach your objectives, because you'll be struggling with your objectives. I can help you, and then I get more. You know, I would say this is a good negotiation point, instead of saying, okay, this is what I want, you know,
and they can afford that. Let's find
you know, say, okay,
and work
let's get
together.
that. The club has this guaranteed. Maybe it's less than what the club wants for sure in terms of guarantee, but then the club shows it's a partner, you know, and we'll need there's something at stake for the club also to deliver, to make sure that, you know, those objectives are reached, and then everybody's happy. The sponsor is happy to pay because they have their objectives. The club is, of course, happy to receive the money. But it's, I think, when we talk partnership, and for many years we heard, no, it's not sponsorship, it's partnership, and so on. This is a good example of partnership.
Yeah, let's do business together.
Yeah, exactly. If you win, I win.
Yeah, and at the end, it has been happening a lot with brands endorsements on athletes for years. You know, I remember when I signed an athlete at Lacoste, very low fix, but very high potential for the athletes. So we said very high bonus, and the athlete delivered and became number one in the world in its sports, and deserved the bonuses he got, because the brand was happy and got the exposure he wanted and all the other benefits of the sponsorship. So yeah, if not revenue sharing, you know, business sponsorship business models based on results and tangible results. Yeah, what are the most common KPIs your clients were asking you when you were at Monaco or Barcelona?
I mean, there's one thing I would say that, of course, there is all these reports to show that, you know, their investment, it's worth what they're paying. I mean, of course, the ROI on media, that was one for sure, you know, and here it was super important to have the third party that was doing that. I remember during those times that, you know, digital was not even part of it. You know, it sounds like a joke, but I remember, you know, not that long ago, having the reports to the sponsors, but saying that actually digital is not there, which of course, you know, doesn't make any sense. So then it's when, you know, the Blink Fires and company come up and, you know, complement your exposure measurements, you know. And I think the digital, again, it just gets more sophisticated, right? I mean, the type of measurements you can get on digital, you know, in terms of engagement, in terms of visibility, you know, if you do a specific branded content, or how positive is the response or how negative is the response, you know, I would say that was the main thing. It's still, I think that in terms of tangible KPIs, I think that those are must today. You have a lot of intangible, and that will always stay in our business, you know. I mean, the association part, no, or bringing your clients to your VIP box in the stadium, and the satisfaction you can get to that, and how business you generate thanks to this, and the relationship. This will always stay in the intangible side of things. But I think that the KPI, the media one, I remember, you know, you always get a bit nervous when you get the reports in, you know, to see if you're going to have a good end of the, or half season or end of the season review, if it's going to be easy or it's not going to be easy, you know. And at the end, this is the basis to sell, you know, the same package to another partner, or to renew, you know, to say, listen, actually, you are underpaying, actually you're overpaying, and then it's not good for me. But I think that was the main KPI. But then more and more you would see, the clients taking the contract and saying, okay, this we didn't do it, this we didn't do it, this we did it, this we didn't do it. We had to do this with players. That's a classic. We had to do this with players, and we couldn't. We had 3 actions with players. We only did 2. We did 1. Okay, that's more part of, that's where you can manage it with the relationship, and this is where still the relationship and the personal and the human relationship stays important. To deal with this type of elements. But I think that the measurement, it's getting more and more sophisticated and more detailed, and when it comes to digital, again, remember the first contracts in sponsorship with the digital part was, kind of vague, Facebook posts and, and this and that. And now digital, it's like this and very concrete and branded content, and this is what's going to be, and it's becoming more and more sophisticated for sure.
Yeah. So if the digital assets in the sponsorship package are more and more important, how do you eventually change the contracts with the athletes? Because part of the digital engagement goes through the athletes. Barcelona is different case because it's Barcelona, but the size of its fan base is massive, and its digital, social media figures are massive. But in some clubs, the athletes have more digital engagement at their own clubs. So how do you renegotiate new contract? How does the contract with the player change based on the fact that if you pay millions to a player, you need a lot more digital engagement?
That's a good topic. That's a good topic. Makes me smile because I'm sure that everybody that is listening can smile when remembering some experiences with players. But no, I think one thing is the contract, and one thing is, let's say, the culture and the position of the club. And let me explain. Because I've seen, okay, let's put this in the contract, or I've been sometimes situations like, no, the player doesn't want to do it. I said, well, but we should put that on the contract, and then they tell me, yeah, it's in the contract, but still doesn't want to do it. So it doesn't really matter. So it's really about.
But don't bother him because I want him to play well this weekend.
Exactly. No, or the best is no, they lost yesterday, so let's not bother them, because they're not in a good mood. I'm sure that many people have heard that also, that one. So, it's a headache in general, to get what you want, because of course you want a lot, because you want for your partners, you want for your digital activities, you want to push your merchandise sales, if you want to do something with your members, or that they go through your hospitality area. So of course I can understand the point of view of the players. Could be like, well, but you guys are asking us so many things, I think that it's about balance and maximization of your time with the players. Contractually, the players, if they do it by groups, they cannot say anything against it, because it's the group rights. So first you need to invent something on that. If it's more for the own media of the club, here there's more liberty. It's like an interview or whatever. So I think that, again, here is very important to explain to the players how important that is, and to also, something that sometimes we underestimate, to think that something they are humans, and there's some things they like to do because of their character, and some things they don't like to do because of their character. They are not actors, for instance, but some can be extroverted, so they might be more up for it, and some guys you put in a situation where that you kill them. So I think you need to balance all of this. It will never be enough for you in the business side. Never. It never will be enough. And it's not a matter of contracts, but I think it's about being smart and also presenting fun things, for them, and that they see that actually if they retweet it or, repost it, it's actually fun for them, and good for their fan base too, and I think but it's a tough one, and if you lose 2 games in a row, forget it, and you need to find the right moment. It's the most important thing, as you say, and the most difficult at the same time. So it's a lot of balancing the act.
Yeah, because at the end, if you pay a player, you don't pay a player not only to play.
For sure.
Not anymore. It's not working like that anymore. Well, so sponsorship, your big sponsors, but how important are the sales outside of the sponsorship? Not speaking about hospitality and ticketing, but speaking about other kind of packages. I'll give you an example. When we spoke with the 49ers and the Minnesota Vikings, and when we spoke about their digital engagement and content strategies, there were two focuses. One is connecting with the emotions of the fans, and one is business. That means they would have a menu of content. The sales team would have a menu of content to sell to sponsors. And if I'm correct, maybe I'm not, but if I'm correct, in the European country of sponsorship and Latin American as well, but you sell a big sponsorship and that's it. It's almost impossible to sell something additional to a sponsor or to sell to other kind of brands that are not competing even. How do you think this will evolve? The ability to sell more products to more clients.
I think that I'm agreeing with you on the fact that in my experience, to sell something new to an existing client and, like a digital content or something, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult, because the expectation in a way for what I've seen is, okay, listen, I'm paying you all this money already, and I'm not paying extra for this. So I remember having these discussions internally. I think that this exercise happens also in football clubs, meaning, what content the digital team is really striving to create new content, new series of content, even more important, branded content to tell this commercial team saying, actually, this spot before the game with the lineup is the most watched, or the final score at the end is the most. So there is a lot of communication, but in my experience and my belief, that helps to enrich your sponsorship packages. Very difficult to upsell, or to sell new things to somebody that is already in it. But when you go to your new main partner, because there's some of your inventory of digital, the most watch, the most engagement and so on, you should just reserve it for your main partner, right? But you cannot give it to an official partner when it's the best part of content you have. So when you go to either renew or find a new partner, you make sure this is in, and you say, we reserve this for you, So enriching the package, I think it's happening, and and digital is becoming more and more important, and rightly so. In my experience, indeed, to just say, okay, we have this, pay us extra because we're going to put your brand in it. Extremely complicated in my experience.
But the thing is that when you sign a contract for 3 or 5 years, you have no clue on where you're going to be in 2 years in digital, because the TikTok is coming on, another social platform, Netflix documentary, plenty of options of content, new content that you want to produce at the end. So that makes it very difficult because you cannot plan everything.
You cannot, absolutely. I mean, there's some contracts that when you look at them 2 or 3 years, or when it's time to renew, and you look at the digital clause, it just looks ridiculous, But back then it made sense, But I mean, 5 Facebook posts, whatever, I mean, means nothing for a brand. So I think, more and more the contracts, the biggest contracts I made in the last years, it was a bit more vague, but on purpose, because it said that literally, on the beginning of each season, for instance, the digital team of the sponsor and the digital team of the club should agree on, and then there's a bit of framework. But as you say, if you are too concrete, you want to be too concrete when you sign in 2 years, it might even go against you, because you said there's a new platform, there's something new, So it's really important that it leaves, even in a contract, you shouldn't do that. That's what the lawyer will always tell you, that it has to be completely square and clear and not open to subjective interpretation. At the end, it's really important on digital, I think, that here the true partnership comes in and establishing, and the contract can do it, I've done it, establishing that, the digital plan will be agreed between parts at the beginning of each season. I think it's what makes more sense.
Yeah, that leaves the doors to, that makes it even complex in evaluation, but because you generate new expectation each time. But agree. So I've got more questions on, on match incomes, but I think, and I see there are quite interesting questions as well in the Q&A. So let's go maybe only one question on the match incomes related to ticketing. We've seen that ticketing has, changed radically in last years, from fixed policies to flexible pricing, secondary market. What would be your tips, and the key questions ticketing guy or income guy, chief revenue officer should ask itself when thinking about ticketing strategies for a club?
I think that the question you need to ask yourself is, how are you maximizing or squeezing, if you want, your inventory of seats? And of course it depends a lot on the demand you have. Of course, that's a big one, because if your capacity of the stadium, you don't sell out your stadium, that's a more difficult one. Okay, then you need to have a completely different strategy on maximizing certain matches, and other matches, have a completely different approach. That's one thing. But what I've seen very interesting in terms of strategies on ticketing for clubs that sell out their stadium is your capacity to sell the same seat many times. So
that was the problem with FC Barcelona.
And that honestly, that was an amazing move, because I think it was in the early 2000s that this came, so a long time ago. FC Barcelona has 90,000 ticket holders, so you can imagine, okay, the stadium is big, but it gives you only 8,000 or 9,000 tickets to be sold, So the capacity that the member or the ticket holder can say, actually, I'm not going on Sunday, I'm going to release my ticket so the club can sell it. And then the club wins, but I also win because I'm reducing a little bit my fee, my annual fee. That's a great way to do it. And so that, for me, that was fantastic. And as a ticket holder, I always thought it was very smart, back in the day. But now the sophistication of the technology and of the people, that manage ticketing, has enabled something that I found fantastic, which is that you do that, but you can even sell tickets or seats that they are not released yet, So that FC Barcelona does it, and potentially other clubs, but I can only talk about FC Barcelona. The one I know is that you go there, you say, I want a seat or two seats in this tribune. The club doesn't have them yet, but they know by statistics and algorithm that in this area, there are going to be 100 seats released. Maybe some of them are released 2 days before the. That's what statistics show. So you're buying the ticket 1 month before. You don't know where you're sitting, the tribune, of course. And then the club has already sold it to you, because what they realize is that the system is smart. But if as a member, I release the day before, the club doesn't have time to sell. So this evolution of actually anticipating the fact, based on data, that statistically X seats will be released in this area of the stadium, so I can sell it 1 month before, even if I don't have it yet. I think that was really, really smart, and that was something that was made by the professionals of the director of FC Barcelona, and who is in AS Roma now, So it's a very knowledgeable guy on that.
Yeah, it's like overbooking for airlines, and I guess we have a lot to learn from airlines and hotel industry when it comes to ticketing.
I remember the ticketing department of FC Barcelona hiring people from airlines, because indeed the logic and the system and the algorithms are going on that direction. Is this anticipating? It's reselling the same seat. The same seat, you sell it many times, during the season.
Reselling and putting up grades and showing the people there's a big difference between this seat and that seat. And even though it might be little one, but perception is high.
No, for sure. And what I think is very interesting is that it's managed by the club. I know in America, there's a lot of culture, and there's big companies like StubHub and so on. but it's managed by the club. So I think that's also, gives the confidence to the member or ticket holder that the ticket is managed, through the official way and for the benefit of the club. My benefit, but the benefit of the club. So it's a smart way to do it.
Yeah. Because of time, let's switch to another question, very much linked to what you do now with startups. We see a lot of teams like 49ers in the US investing in startups in spaces where they have room for improvement when it comes to generating income. For example, in gifting, so digital gifting solutions, and so on. Is it happening a lot in European football, in teams investing in spaces where there are room to improve? And if you invest in a startup, you do a big case with AS Monaco, Barcelona, then the startup is going to see all the other clubs and sell its solutions. So you can do business if you have equity as well. What is your feeling about that?
My feeling is that it's happening, but very slow. Okay, probably again because of the short-term vision of the football clubs, they don't see that this could really lead to something in the years to come. There's a very good example of Barcelona. Real Madrid has started also an initiative. Manchester City has been doing something also. In terms of it's more incubation of startups. And then of course how the club gets a benefit, be it because of equity, be it because there's an agreement in place that of course if the startup succeeds because there's the stamp of the football club on it, there's a winning also for the club. So again, I'm sorry to talk again about Barcelona, but the Barcelona Innovation Hub is a very interesting one on that because they started in 2017, and I think it's a good example of that because they do cooperate with startups. Still it's much more that can be done, because there's not equity and things like that, but it's happening, and they link it to their university, knowledge. They had like a knowledge department, so it's interesting move, I think. But that's why I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Real Madrid is doing also on that regard. And then UEFA and FIFA, they have also their initiatives, So and then there's many incubators not linked to the football clubs. But I think here there's an opportunity certainly for football clubs or owners, because that's another one. That's another angle. Owners that are businessmen and they want to be involved in this world because you know how it is with startups. When you get the right one, it can work very well. And some owners are really businessmen. So I think that for this type of clubs, that because of the owner is a businessman, they might think more mid long term, even if it's for his own business. I think there's a lot that can be done on that regard still, a lot.
Yeah, it's important what you mentioned, the owners. If you take the case of the 49ers, the owners is the one who put all the, different companies investing, and so he has a stake in everything. So that makes his vision very different in some ways. He's a businessman. It's Absolutely. A leisure, but it's first a business. Maybe sometimes football is a leisure first and a business second.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, American mentality is different, and I think football is not a business for the owners. It's not a good business. That's for sure.
All right. Let's go to. I'm going to close with a few flash questions, very much inspired from Inside Actor Studio, and then we go to the Q&As. So, what is your favorite word?
Favorite word?
Yeah.
In what language? That's the funny thing. I think
you have many. That's right.
Mar. I can say mar.
What?
Mar, sea, the sea, mar. The word.
El mar.
Fantastic. El mar evolves. It's like a vision, of peace and happiness. And we have it a lot. I have it a lot in Barcelona and also here. So I'm in a good place.
A bit of a feeling of the painting behind you. What is your least favorite word?
The least favorite, I think that's the alarm. Alarm as a concept. I don't like it.
Okay. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
What turns me on? I mean, sports certainly turns me on, and a sunny day turns me on. To be honest,
Come to Mexico. Well, you live in Monaco. Not bad.
you have to.
Not bad. Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite athlete?
Magic Johnson, easy one.
Magic Johnson. Nice. Because
Absolutely. I grew up, have a certain age already. So I grew up with, the NBA of Magic and Bird, and I was for Magic, and Magic is my favorite athlete, and the one that really makes me believe that apart from winning, it's very important, the showtime, to play nice and to play beautiful. And I still have this from these times. It's not only about winning; it's also, making it beautiful. So Magic Johnson, no doubts.
nice. What is your favorite stadium?
I mean, that's
Apart from Barca.
okay, because that's my favorite stadium. I was very impressed by Wembley, I have to say, by the new Wembley. I was there a few years ago, and Paris also. Paris, Stade de France, for the Champions League of 2006, which links me to Barca again. Sorry, but it was very special. So I would say Wembley and Stade de France.
Nice. What sound or noise do you love in the stadium?
Well, the roar of a goal. Nothing beats that.
All right, not the Barca song. So the goal.
If I say Barca again, you're gonna kick me out. So I'm not.
Okay. What is the one you hate in a stadium?
Well, the one I hate is, I mean, for sure the racist any racist sound for sure. I hate. For the rest, I think that it's part of the flow of the game. So I mean, even if it's a bit hostile for the other team, I think it's part of the game. You just shouldn't cross certain lines, but it's part of the emotional roller coaster of a football game.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Wow.
We love what we do. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, and we are in sports, so I mean, it's difficult to choose something else, right? I mean, probably something related to traveling. I love to travel, and I don't know, something in like a hotel director or something like that.
Good. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, I hope this comes very late, that's for sure. But maybe something about, we have a TV to watch football here or something like that.
Messi is here. Come, you're gonna meet him. You're gonna be with him again. All right. Well done. So let's go to the Q&A. Thank you so much. I think there will be maybe a next one with you because there's plenty of topics we wanted to address and no time on, maybe in Spanish for the Latin American audience as well.
With pleasure.
Let's go to the questions. Do you think Christian Guiro, do you think there still will be budgets available for innovative projects, or clubs will keep it safe and prioritize basic needs first? I suppose it's linked to COVID, to the economic crisis.
Yeah, I think, I mean, yeah, it's a good question on the sense that it's easy to talk about innovation and projects and so on when the clubs, and not only the clubs, but the clubs are trying to survive, and I think that it's going to be very difficult answering the question. I mean, it's going to be difficult, but at the same time, I think that that the ownership or the management need to make some directions, some decisions on the directions of the club. And to be honest, it's not always about investment. I mean, the good thing about this reality we're living today is that there are ways to work on innovation as partnership, as revenue shares, negotiating your terms in a different way. So you don't have to see innovation as a cost, like I need to put, this money on the table now and I don't have it, that shouldn't stop you. Of course, you will not do everything you want to do, but you will find out that in the market, there are companies that first provide solutions that might be adapted to your needs, and secondly, for them, the market is not booming either. So, you might be able to negotiate the terms you want in terms of fees, in terms of timing, in terms of structure of the deal. So I think if the innovations are there to generate revenue, there might be win-win partnerships to set up with some companies that they are open, and I know some of them that are open to have partnerships and revenue share. Again, I think that we're going a lot into that mentality of if you win, I win. So don't. My advice, even if it's difficult, is don't see innovation like equals cost. There might be formulas that allow you to defer that on time, or make it in a way that you're not putting so much money up front, or if any.
But the important thing, maybe to add something, is the mistake is not to do it. The mistake is not to explore new ways, I would say, no?
Because what we don't realize, and it's normal that we don't realize it, because when you're in a crisis, you're trying to survive, is that now also you are shaping how you're going to be after this, because this, I mean, one of the things I like is, again, so many things you hear these months, is that this is a tunnel. It's not a hole, it's a tunnel. And it might be dark, it might be long, it might be, a lot of people will suffer, lose jobs, etc. So it's hard, but it's a tunnel. One day we will be out of this, and then if you haven't done anything to prepare for that in this period, when you get out, you're going to say, okay, I'm out, but I'm really behind other people, that they use their time during the tunnel to be ready for after the tunnel. So I think, again, don't see it as a cost, and really prepare for the aftermath, because the life will go on, and you need to be prepared for that.
Question from Jim Andrews. He says he agrees completely with you regarding the gap between sponsors and right holders clubs, and it has existed for a long time. What do you think it will finally take to bridge that gap?
I think that it's one of these gaps, that I'm not saying it will never be solved, but it's difficult, because the culture of a football club, it's very different from a culture of a company, and it's going to be really difficult. I don't want to be pessimistic. I'm just saying that, there's some things that are endemic in societies or in companies and so on, I mean, it's like marketing and finance, it's two different ways to look at things. And, it will always be like that in a way. And I think, I'm not saying that nothing should be done. I think the clubs should get more, conscious of this gap. The problem is that the high management of football clubs are very little aware of this gap. And I think that's the biggest problem. That's something that the sponsorship director knows, the commercial director knows, of course, but it's something that it's very difficult that it reaches, let's say, upstairs, and that's what makes it quite difficult to prioritize on that,
So hiring the people with different backgrounds and the specific expertise is not enough if you don't have the top leadership embracing the change.
I think so. And the resources, in my experience, and what I've seen around also, they are more allocated, to salespeople. I mean, I'm not even talking about the sports side, which we all know, but it's of course easier to get salespeople than to get servicing people, activation people or account management and so on. It's slower, and the lack of resources, I would say, it's what makes it very, very difficult to fulfill what the company, which sometimes can be a multinational with a lot of people in the sponsorship department, a lot of people in the marketing department. Not always the case, but could be. And it's mismatched completely with the little team of activation or servicing that the club can have.
Question from Luis Frias. Which do you think is the most important sponsor relationship club brand in the history of football?
The relationship club brand?
Yeah.
I think,
what is the one kind of you admire and you say, this is a beautiful relationship?
I think there's one, and it comes straight because to my mind because of the news of the last days. But I think Liverpool and Carlsberg is fantastic. I think Liverpool and Carlsberg it's become so authentic, so in it. I think that when you think of Liverpool, you think of Carlsberg. I think that if tomorrow Liverpool will announce another beer, you would be even like shocked, right? It's I think it's difficult for us to see such a long-lasting relationship nowadays. It still happens, but it's difficult, and and I know the people that made it happen, and how they breathe Liverpool and how they I think it's a fantastic example.
And I loved you post something on LinkedIn after the title of Liverpool. With the 3 factors of success of Liverpool. One was, if I'm correct, history and tradition, the respect for history and tradition, while being very modern using data. Can you let us?
Yeah, I think because in Liverpool they had I think there's the values, what the club represents, that's one thing. Then there's the history, there's the tradition, and then how you how you live with that. And the problem of Liverpool during many years was that it was a fantastic brand, but without success on the field, and that was a bit the problem. And now you get the success on the pitch in the moment where your values, are really aligned, with what you're doing, and the tradition, of course, still there, and how they maximize that as a brand and commercially, I had the opportunity to listen to a keynote speech of their CEO, Mr. Moore, in New York 2 years ago, and you saw they're having a direction. They know where they're going. Of course, that doesn't guarantee success on the pitch. That's football, that's sport. But that my point was, if you are going, again, the business and sports, if you're doing everything into the right direction on the business, and the sports excellence comes in, because the Champions League winners from last year and now Premier League winners, that's the climax.
Yeah. So that goes to another question. If you had to create a video or docu-series like Match Day or Sunderland Till I Die, what would be the one you would create? Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp?
And Carlsberg. It's a good question, because I think that now something that is a good example, something that was very innovative and people loved, when it came up, because it was never seen. Now you're having a bit of an overload, right? It's the surprise effect is not there anymore, right? And Sunderland is a special one, because Sunderland, the story is just amazing. But if now they tell you there's this club that is doing again the inside stories and so on, you're not gonna be shocked. I would like to maybe see it in other sports. That could be something that changes a bit, I would say. Because I think we are seeing too much of it. The Michael Jordan one, for instance, was fantastic now. To reveal it after so many years. But I think that one thing that for obvious reasons, but now it would change for the future, is now it would be fantastic to see a full documentary on, how Messi was in the academy of FC Barcelona, the day-to-day, how Mbappe was in Monaco, that's something that the clubs don't have a lot of access to. And one of the ideas we had was to really, maybe record a lot of content today that we don't know if it's relevant, but maybe in 5-10 years, it's really relevant, because you have the new guy and you are following him, and of course you don't use it because he's a kid, but if he makes it to the top, you have a lot of content, and it would be fantastic to follow, they're kids, so you cannot abuse it, but to see how they train, to see how they struggle, to see what they're saying on day to day and so on, like almost like a reality show, but you don't show it. You just show it if he makes it, I think that could be an interesting angle. I think we need to innovate on that. I think there cannot be more match days and more, the Manchester City was fantastic when it came, but if you see the same thing all over with other clubs, it's going to lose interest. Unless it's your club, then yeah, of course it's interesting. But to appeal to a wider audience, I think we need to innovate. So that could be an idea.
Yeah, I think if it were another sport, I would go to the All Blacks in rugby, because their culture of winning and the deep rugby culture in that country is just so deep and so fascinating. The deserve to win concept they have, it's beautiful. Yeah, so much insight, so much learning. Juli, thank you so much for your time.
Over already?
Yeah, well, it's an hour and a half, and we could go more. I think we'll do more, and we're obviously we're going to keep sharing news on you, what you're doing, keep informing us, and we'll share with the audience, and we'll see about doing one in Spanish for the Latin American market and Spanish market that has a lot to learn from you and a lot of potential. Maybe the last question is, what potential do you see in football in Latin America?
I think that as you said, Latin America is, for me, it's where I think that the future can be, and there is the opportunities, because the passion in Latin America for sport, has no comparison almost with anything. And I think that you see more and more professionalism in clubs, in leagues, and they're coming up very strong. And I think that there's a lot to be done, with national leagues, with the football clubs, with Copa Libertadores is a fantastic event. It's so strong. It was so strong when it came to Europe. It came for the wrong reasons, but it was fantastic. So I think that I'm absolutely up for doing a session in Spanish and exchange with your audience in Latin America, to be honest, because you have amazing markets like Mexico, you have amazing markets like Brazil, but you have incredible countries like Colombia, like Chile. This it's where you breathe football, in a way that is amazing. Of course, the challenge of Latin America is that when the talent is there, they cannot afford it, and they go to Europe. That's it's been always like this. I would say even more in the last years. It's more difficult to keep the talent. They leave earlier and earlier, and it's I would say on the sports side the issue. But you see how they perform. You see Uruguay, with 3 million people country. The teams that they bring up. It's just a fascinating. It's a fascinating continent on sports. I would say that maybe has lacked the structure, and has suffered a bit from some incorrect policies, but the potential, I really think the potential is there, and I would love to have one on Latin America.
Maybe we should do one with one sports director and you on the business side. What to do in Latin America?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Fine. We're going to look for the sports guy. I've got an idea on who can make it. Both European and Latin American experience, because it's very different.
It's very absolutely.
Cool. So let's do it. Juli, thank you so much for your time. Next week, another SiS Master. We keep on moving. We keep on sharing. And good luck for your new company. Wish you the best. It's fantastic to be independent.
I hope so. I hope so.
And I'm sure you'll bring a lot of value to your clients. So good luck in your new journey, and keep safe, please. Keep safe in these difficult times.
Perfect. Thank you, Arnaud, really, for the invitation. It was really, really a pleasure. And for, of course, everybody that's been listening and watching all this time.
Cheers, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Adios.
Adios.
Bye.